You breathe in and the world changes. A burning ember catches, glowing bright red in the dark. Smoke fills your lungs, crossing the blood-brain barrier in mere seconds. For most of human history, fire was solely a tool for survival. But one day, it became an entirely different kind of experience. Fire was your ancestors' greatest discovery. It kept the predators in the dark. It cooked tough meat, releasing calories that fed your rapidly expanding brain. This single tool changed your anatomy forever. It provided warmth during the freezing, unforgiving nights of the Pleistocene epoch. You relied on it completely. Without it, you would freeze. Without it, the darkness would consume you. But how did you go from sitting near the smoke to intentionally pulling it inside your own body? Think about the sheer danger of inhaling smoke. Your lungs evolved to process clean, oxygen-rich air. Coughing is your body's immediate, violent rejection of airborne toxins. It is an involuntary reflex designed to keep you alive in a world full of wildfires. Your respiratory system is a delicate network of tissues. It is designed exclusively for extracting oxygen and expelling carbon dioxide. When smoke enters the system, your body goes into a state of acute alarm. The particulate matter coats the alveoli. The carbon monoxide binds to your red blood cells, starving them of the oxygen you need to survive. Every biological instinct tells you to run from the smoke. So what compelled your ancestors to ignore this survival instinct and breathe the burning ash deep into their chests? To understand this, your mind must travel back deeply into prehistory. For hundreds of thousands of years, you lived in enclosed spaces. You sought shelter in caves to escape the biting wind. You needed refuge from the massive carnivores that stalked the night. At Kizum Cave in modern-day Israel, researchers like Marion Prevost have uncovered ash layers dating back 300,000 years. These dense, compacted layers show that your early ancestors managed indoor hearths continuously. You spent half your life breathing in the ambient smoke of the campfire. The smoke was a constant companion, filling the air you breathed while you slept, ate, and crafted your stone tools. Your eyes watered constantly. Your throat burned. Yet you stayed close to the flame. Did this constant exposure change your relationship with smoke? Sitting in a cave, the smoke would have permeated your clothes, your hair, and your lungs. It was an inescapable part of your existence. You could not wash it away. You could not escape it without freezing. You would have thrown different types of wood, herbs, and dried plants into the flames to see how they burned. Some plants smelled terrible, driving the mosquitoes and biting flies away from the camp. Other plants burned sweet, altering the mood of everyone sitting around the glowing coals. You experimented with the environment around you. You began to notice that the world felt slightly different depending on what you fed to the fire. How long did it take to isolate the plants that changed your mind? The leap from passive inhalation to active smoking is a monumental shift in human behavior. It requires intention, technology, and a deep understanding of botany. You had to observe the natural world with absolute precision. You had to find a specific plant, dry it out perfectly, and create a vessel to channel the smoke directly into your mouth. You had to invent the pipe. This was not a random accident, but a calculated feat of prehistoric engineering. You became a chemist working with fire and ash. You learned how to manipulate temperature. You learned how to manipulate your own sensory experience. Fast forward to the end of the last ice age. You are standing in the Great Salt Lake Desert in what is now Utah. The wind is brutally cold, sweeping across the barren, freezing landscape. Ice sheets still cover massive portions of the northern hemisphere. Survival here requires immense physical endurance. In 2021, an archaeologist named Darren Duke excavated a site here called the Wishbone Hearth. Deep in the ancient ash, protected from the elements for millennia, he found something that completely rewrote the timeline of human habits. The discovery shifted everything researchers thought they knew about early foragers. What exactly was hidden in the freezing dirt of the Wishbone site? There were charred seeds of a wild plant known as Nicotiana attenuata. This is wild tobacco. These tiny, fragile seeds were carbon dated to 12,300 years ago. They were found alongside bone tools and the remains of hunted ducks. Your ancestors were not just burning this plant for warmth. The presence of these specific seeds in an environment where they do not naturally grow tells a profound story of human intention. You did not just stumble upon this plant. You sought it out. You recognized its power. They were carefully processing it for consumption. Wild tobacco does not naturally grow in the marshy wetlands that once existed at this site. You had to travel great distances across dangerous terrain to find it, harvest it, and bring it back to your camp. You brought it back specifically to burn and inhale. You braved the cold and the predators to secure a steady supply of this specific botanical specimen. You carried it with the same care you gave to your hunting weapons. This was a deliberate, calculated effort to alter your brain chemistry. Why would you spend precious calories gathering a toxic leaf in a harsh landscape? The answer lies in the deeply wired reward pathways of your brain. When you inhale tobacco smoke, nicotine floods your bloodstream in less than 10 seconds. It travels straight to your central nervous system. It bypasses all your natural defenses. It mimics a naturally occurring neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, binding to highly specific receptors in your brain. This triggers a massive, unnatural release of dopamine, the chemical messenger responsible for pleasure and motivation. Your brain suddenly feels sharper, calmer, and flooded with a synthetic sense of well-being. You feel powerful. You feel awake. Can you imagine the power of this feeling in a brutal, prehistoric world? Your daily life was a relentless cycle of hunting, foraging, and avoiding starvation. The elements were constantly trying to kill you. Disease was always a threat. Stress and physical pain were your constant, inescapable companions. Then, you discover a dried leaf that instantly melts the stress away, suppresses your gnawing hunger, and gives you a sudden burst of focused energy. It must have felt like absolute magic. It gave you the stamina to keep moving when your body wanted to collapse. It gave you the illusion of control in a chaotic world. Let us recreate a specific day in this ancient world. You have been tracking a small herd of game for 3 agonizing days. Your muscles are aching, and your stomach is completely empty. The temperature is dropping rapidly as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in deep purples and reds. The wind begins to howl through the canyon. You sit down by a small, hidden fire to avoid drawing attention in the dark. You pull a small, hollowed-out piece of bone or stone from your leather pouch. You handle it with extreme care. You carefully pack the dried, crushed leaves of wild tobacco into one end of the hollow tube. You take a glowing ember from the fire and press it gently against the fragile leaves. You draw the air sharply through the tube. The bitter, harsh smoke hits the back of your throat, and your lungs instinctively want to reject the intrusion. But you hold it in. You fight the urge to cough, allowing the thick smoke to settle deep inside your chest. Does the warmth spreading through your chest make the hunger fade? Within seconds, the powerful alkaloid hits your brain. The overwhelming exhaustion in your legs seems to temporarily disappear. Your vision feels slightly sharper, your mind more alert, yet profoundly relaxed. The biting cold seems less significant. The fear of the dark recedes into the background. You pass the pipe to the hunter sitting next to you, forging a deep social bond in the flickering light of the fire. You share the experience. You share the smoke. This act of sharing smoke became a cornerstone of human social interaction. Archaeologist Stephen Carmody has studied ancient pipes found in North America dating back thousands of years. His meticulous research reveals that smoking was not a casual, everyday habit for early humans. It was a deeply sacred, ritualistic practice used to communicate with the spiritual world and cement political alliances. The smoke rising into the sky was a literal and figurative bridge between your physical body and the unknown, powerful forces of nature. You did not smoke out of boredom, but out of reverence and necessity. The pipe became a tool of diplomacy. It became a vessel for prayer. But here is the surprising plot twist that completely contradicts human intuition. You think that you domesticated tobacco. You believe that your ancestors mastered the plant, cultivating it for your own pleasure, ritual, and trade. You look at the vast fields of agriculture and assume you are the one in control. You think human ingenuity conquered the wild leaf. But from a purely evolutionary perspective, the exact opposite is true. Tobacco domesticated you. How could a simple, mindless plant conquer the apex predator of planet Earth? Before humans, tobacco was just a toxic weed struggling to survive in a competitive ecosystem. It evolved nicotine strictly as a deadly neurotoxin to paralyze and kill insects that tried to eat its leaves. It was a chemical defense mechanism designed to deter consumption. It was meant to be a poison. But this exact same poison happened to perfectly hack the complex dopamine system of the human brain. The plant unwittingly hijacked your reward circuitry to ensure its own survival and propagation. It tricked your brain into thinking it was essential for survival. It made you crave its poison. Because you became addicted to the feeling, you changed the physical landscape of the planet. You cleared massive ancient forests just to plant it in neat, orderly rows. You watered it during droughts, protected it from the very pests it was trying to kill, and carried its seeds across vast oceans to every single continent on the globe. You dedicated millions of acres of prime agricultural land purely to ensure this single plant multiplied. You went to war over it. You built entire economies around it. Agriculture is often seen as human mastery over nature, but in this specific case, agriculture was a brilliant, botanical trap. The plant used your own brain chemistry to make you its dedicated, tireless servant. The plant thrived while you suffered the long-term consequences of the smoke. It expanded its territory across the globe, relying entirely on your addiction to spread its seeds. It became one of the most successful plant species on Earth. You traded the health of your lungs for the survival of the leaf. You bound your own evolutionary path to a toxic weed. You became the carrier. The plant became the master. Think about how this ancient relationship still dominates your modern world. You walk down a busy city street today, surrounded by concrete and glass. You see someone standing outside a massive office building, shivering in the cold winter air. They are holding a small, burning stick of paper and dried leaves, or perhaps a glowing piece of plastic and metal emitting a flavored vapor. They are stepping away from their stressful day to trigger the exact same neurochemical reaction that your ancestors sought thousands of years ago. They are escaping the modern world using a prehistoric coping mechanism. Your brain is running the identical biological software as the tired hunter at the Wishbone site. You are still seeking that 10-second rush of dopamine to cope with the pressures of existence. You are still using smoke and vapor to manage stress, suppress appetite, and slightly alter your perception of reality. The technology used to deliver the chemical has changed dramatically, but the biological drive remains entirely prehistoric. You are still trying to find a moment of peace in a harsh environment. You breathe in, and human history changes forever.